everybody. Welcome to episode 569 of Sonic Talk. This is the podcast dedicated to music technology, synthesizers, software, DSP, controllerism, production, music production, live production, all of the things that surround a whole business of making and creating, and in some cases consuming music as well, and lots of other ancillary things besides. I want to say thank you very much to our friends at iZotope, who, if you stay tuned, you'll be able to win a copy of their RX7 software. And also I want to say hello to the YouTube chatties and also the IRC chatties. There'll be details of how you get to that if you just go to sonicstate.com/live. And while we're at it, we also want to say we've got a special 20% discount off Synthplex. I don't know if you know, Synthplex is coming up in... Let me see, what does it say here? 29 days and 53 minutes and 26 seconds. Hard, soft, modular DJ pedals and more. That's a new show in Burbank with Mike Learmouth and Michael Boddicker involved. They got Thomas Dolby at it as well. And they're giving us a 20% off. So if you just go to bit.ly/synthplex20, that'll get you, if you're going to buy tickets, you'll save 20%. That's going to go up until the 15th of March. So it's worth checking out. If you're going to go anyway, you can save you 20% only on the day tickets and whatnot. I don't think it doesn't help with the actual banquet but yes, go to it. Go and check it out. It starts on March the 28th, I think, the show. So, hello, folks. We got a couple of people we haven't seen for a little while. We'll start off with Mr. Yoad Nevo, who's over there. I think he's not in his studio. Last time we saw him, he was in his studio where he does his mixing and producing and songwriting and co-writing and all of those things. A new studio, which you've now finished, right, Yoad?
Yeah, just finished on Saturday, and I'm very, very relieved. It took 10 months. It was crazy, and I'm really, really happy that I'm over. I mean, it's still not 100%, but at least the builders are out of the way, and yeah, it's manageable.
Can a studio ever be 100% though? There's always something in the fix list, isn't there? But I suppose while you're over there, because you're also working on Waves products as well, which is, I guess, you're on your Waves day at the moment, or certainly will be.
Waves week, yeah.
Waves week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Can you ever finish it? Because the thing about building a studio is, when you finished it and you're starting to use it, it's impossible to think of everything that you might want. So there's always we could, feature creep.
Well, yeah, I mean, the last studio I had, which I built over 10 years ago, I had kind of channels for cables and things like that. So it was fairly easy to be honest, to add more stuff, because pulling out old looms and unused stuff was impossible. Once it's a big lump of cables, so it's quite impossible to pull one out. But I had to layer. It was on top of the old ones as I needed them, and yeah, when I took the studio apart, there was so much redundancy in terms of cabling and stuff like that. So this time I thought hard on and long about everything, and I think I managed to come up with a system that will last me for years to come. There's always, plus things are becoming more and more wireless, so even for the live room I didn't even bother running HDMI cables, because I'm going to do it by whatever it is, AirView or whatever kind of Wi-Fi or something of that sort, instead of worrying about long cabling and long USBs and stuff like that. I mean, I have all the leads in the walls, but I'm planning on doing it in a more kind of mobile,
that sounds like Wi-Fi a good idea. I guess the thing is also, you can't go wrong with just sticking a load of pairs of Cat 5 or Cat 6 down, because you can transport HDMI over with extenders over Cat 5. You can also send it via NDI, which is another network protocol. If you've got a box at either end, it will just receive it. So there's loads of ways of doing it.
Yeah, so I have Cat 7 8-way.
What is Cat 7? I've never even heard of Cat 7.
Well, you can get Cat 8 as well, but it was like really expensive. Well, I asked the head of IT at Waves, what should I get? And he said, get Cat 7. So that's what I did. It was very simple.
Right. Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, exactly. So I put eight of the on each, like in each room, there's 8-way. There's an 8-way of Cat 7. So I think that will last me for a while.
That'll keep me going. Well, good to hear it.
Yeah.
So, Gaz, you also refitted your... Oh, sorry.
Okay,
you also refitted your studio recently? Sorry, what did you want to say?
Just lastly, I just wanted to say that despite of all this modern technology and Cat 7 and whatnot, I also ran through the ceiling. I don't know if you remember the MIDI timepiece 2, the Mark of the Unicorn, and I have 4 or 5 of them. So, and you know that you can network 2 devices to give you 16 ports. You can take one of them, and then you have a special DAB cable, like the old Mac serial cable.
Oh God, yeah, I know, yeah.
So I managed to source one and source an extension, and I ran it through the wall, and I just checked it the other day, and it works, and it's amazing because it's like that's
old
one
school.
of
that's
the first. That's
30-year-old technology. Your 20-year-old technology. Wow.
Analog MIDI, yeah.
Gaz, you also done some refitting. In fact, have you got some new panels up there?
There is some, yeah, and there I'm getting more as well. So yes, work in progress. But the studio is much better, and you're going to enjoy it next time you're here because it's a lot easier to.
I must come over and have a look. Did you put any Cat 5 or Cat 6 in yours?
I did, yeah. So I've got all the kind of synths that are behind me. I can't get. Oh no, you can't see them. Don't matter. But they are all running into a Behringer XR18, which I think, as people know, we're quite big fans of. And I've got that now. The Cat 5 is going into that. So it's a much more humble setup, but it's working really well actually. So I've got various iOS devices. In fact, I'm putting to use all of the old. I've got 4 iPads in here now, and wow. So they're all running the software for operating either the MR18, which is the MIDIWrist version, or the Behringer XR18, and it's so much better actually since I wired it in rather than using the wireless. The wireless
just not quite.
Yeah.
It just it always goes down when you want it, when you least want it to. Yeah, I'm the same. We've got an XR18 just here, but we also just invested in. We bought an SD8, which is the AES50 stage box for the X32. And it sounds a lot better. It's a lot because we were previously coming out just ADAT out of
that's right,
an old 88,000, which is not such a great. It's just an old mic pre.
Well, it's had a good innings though, hasn't it?
It certainly.
I remember going into a BBC broadcast van, nearly 20 years ago, and it was just racks of those 8,000 or 800s.
8,000s, yeah.
Yeah, but in the studio, my setup now is kind of working really nicely, and I've been using Machina as my main MIDI sequencer, and that's really good fun. It actually, I think people underestimate how good a MIDI sequencer that is. Irrespective of using any of the sample-y sort of
I'm disappointed you're not using the OPZ, Gaz, to be honest. I really thought... Oh, you are? As your main sequencer.
Not as my main sequencer, but it's... yes. But what I was going to say, though, I did a little thing the other day, which was quite good fun. I realised I've got 8 analog synths here, and I had the same sequence coming out of Machina on to all 8. And I set all of the levels exactly the same, and then just going through the solos, just jumping between them all. And I just set all of the synthesizers just to be playing a very, very, vanilla sawtooth wave with the filter fully open. So just to try to get them all exactly the same sounding, playing the same sequence, and then just jumping between the solos, just to sort of kind of listen to the flavor of the different sawtooths. And really interesting. And actually I had 7 analog synth actually and one digital synth. And funnily enough, the digital synth sounded the fattest.
Well, there you go. Sometimes that's exactly the case.
Yeah. I won't say which.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, don't. That's exactly. You can keep that information to yourself. Save it for us. But I guess the thing is, you could do stuff with DSP on that kind of business. Let's get on to some news. Obviously, the big news, the big shock was the passing of Mark Hollis, Talk's main guy. I mean, it's horrible to start on a sad note, but. On a positive front, it makes you kind of go back and listen to all that great stuff. I actually did find there's a really interesting interview, which is Mark Hollis talking about the making of Spirit of Eden and Laughingstock, and it's via Port Film Co-op, and it's just
every album we've come out and we thought, oh yeah, this is definitely better than the last. Because if we didn't think that, you see,
he doesn't sound like what I expect him to sound. He sounds a lot more
he's
colloquial.
Geezer, isn't he?
He's but it's a really interesting interview just about the whole creative process, particularly because Spirit of Eden, as we know, is quite groundbreaking, particularly after their sort of big 80s kind of studio vibe where they really focused on songwriting. They kind of went all Miles Davis and improv, and it sounded. There's one point in this interview where he's saying, "Yeah, I mean, you're lucky if you've got, you're going through sort of 10 hours of stuff. I mean, 10%." Would be really good of stuff you could use from improvisation. Sometimes even 0.5% is really good. And I was thinking, crikey, what a nightmare. But Gaz, I know you're a big fan, and a lot of people are sort of a similar age were just, they're a real shining light in that sea of rather unpleasantness that the 80s could have been, and they managed to shine like a beacon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, by the end of the 1980s, I'd really, I love like 1970s music, 1960s music. I'd got really sick of that 80s kind of production sound. And somebody played me Spirit of Eden a couple of years after it had come out. It came out in 1988. I think I heard it first in 1990, maybe 1991. But it was just the absolute antithesis of 1980s production. And I was fascinated by it, and I'm still completely fascinated by it. But for many years, and I'm sure many people will actually relate to this, loving that album, I felt like I was in a really little secret gang, because I would meet people, and invariably it would turn out that it would be our sort of shared favorite album, and all sorts of intriguing and interesting stuff would happen as this album was the thing that bound it together. And I'll give an example. Sean Organ, who's been a drummer and in my band for 20 years, really, and when we first met was in the Hells Angels headquarters in South Wales, the Berserkers. Oh, that's another story. But that's where we first met, and we were talking, and we discovered that we had this, that it was our favourite album. And a number of years later, and he joined the band, and we got a flat that we were going to share. We moved into this flat, and we were looking around the flat. The first day we got in there, it was a big old house in Cardiff, and there was a basement there. Oh, and we went down into the basement. And we had to use a torch because the light wasn't working. And there was nothing in this basement apart from this old table. I went and just looked at this table, and there was a drawer in the table. And I opened the drawer, and what should be inside was an original copy of Spirit of Eden. I was just like, wow, there's something about that album, just magical stories around it. I mean, there's something about that music. But I mean, to talk about, obviously the sad loss of Mark Hollis is, Mark Hollis, we have heard not a peep from him since just after his solo album, the Mark Hollis album. For those of you who don't know this, obviously Talk in the 1980s started off as like a synth pop band, and then the pivotal album, The Beautiful Colour of Spring, which has still got sort of hallmarks of 1980s, big drums and all this kind of stuff, and there are some clues on there. I mean,
where it's going,
where it's going. but not really we weren't really prepared for what they became. 1988, Spirit of Eden, and then followed by 1991's absolutely stunning Laughing Stock, and then nothing. That was it. That was the end of Talk Talk. After that incredible album, and then there was nothing until 1998, where Mark Hollis released his like a eponymous solo album with a very peculiar thing on the cover. Who knows what that is? Like a bread dog. I don't know what it is, but an amazing album. And one of the constants, apart from Mark Hollis, across this is the incredible engineer Phil Brown. And Phil released a book a few years back called Are We Still Rolling? And there's some really interesting anecdotes about the making of these albums. But like Mark Hollis, though, was this, he retired more or less.
Yeah,
more or less. There are a few things. He did produce an album along with Phil Brown, Jan Garbarek's daughter, Anya Garbarek. It's a great album, very underrated, and she obviously was a huge fan of those Talk Albums. But that was it. I mean, we didn't. That was it.
He sort of disappeared, didn't he? Just got on with his
disappeared.
Life. Yeah, good for him.
It's this kind of, in a way, I mean, it's so sad that he's died for sure. But I mean, in terms of his musical output, I mean, that stopped in 1998 with that album, and there's so many questions and such a lot of things I always wanted to know.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The idea that that there's the whole thing about the 27 Club, isn't there? Where if you die young, then everybody remember. But you could just disappear from the scene and still have just as much of an impact. And I mean, you could still just sort of retreat, and people will still go, "Wow, what was it they were doing?" It so it doesn't have the same character. I don't know. Does Talk speak to you in the same way?
Not in the same way, I imagine, as to you both. I mean, I loved it, and I loved their sound, because it was, like I said, it was different, and it was kind of lush and I don't know, just wide and warm, and very poppy, which is something that I really like. The combination of something not being kind of too. I don't like using the words cold and warm and all that, but there was something about it, like I said, that was just different, and it's very saddening.
He was a very passionate performer, wasn't he? I mean, his vocal.
Yeah, and there's something about his voice. Absolutely, something about his voice that is really like a proper kind of. I don't know. I wouldn't say one of the voices of the 80s. Yeah, possibly. Definitely in pop.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
and yeah.
But Nick, there is something I'd like to say, though. Something about Spirit of Eden, which is really interesting from a technical point of view, is that that album was actually was recorded onto digital, I think Mitsubishi 32 channel sort of digital tape.
They had really good sound, those machines. Yeah.
Oh, right. But they only used pre-1967 front end, so preamps and mics that were from
that's interesting.
So in a way, this is kind of how interesting. This was in I presume 1987. Maybe
so it's quite ahead of its time in a way. That's what.
Well, I mean, how this is how we've moved, isn't it? This idea of like a digital recorder, but this really like an esoteric front end, and So I think that was an interesting aspect.
Yeah,
that Mark Hollis album's quite interesting. Oh, sorry, go
on. No, just regarding those dash, the X80, there was something about it. And I know that CLA was using them until relatively recently. He was just copy everything to like two machines and run the SSL automation and all that. There's something about those machines, and I have to say that there was something of a slightly later era. There was something about the Digitsign 888s, the front end of Pro Tools at the time, which was even the 16-bit version. There was something about it. It sounded like a machine. So even though it wasn't a tape machine, there was something about it that sounded like
There was some mechanics
it was
involved,
going
right?
into a machine rather than a computer, and I kind of miss this because these days everything is so transparent and there's so much headroom and there's so little noise, and perhaps one of the contributors to that sound is the noise, because at one point, maybe 10 years back, I was really obsessed with dithering and noise, right about the time when we started doing the modeling plugins, and we came to learn how much the noise and the hum and the hiss and all that, all those factors were really important to the sound. And this is something that I remember from the old days of mixing from analog tape and sending the different tracks to different reverbs and delays and stereo enhancers and AMS and all that. You get, even if there's nothing playing, you immediately get that sense of grandness, just because everything is like, all the hiss and the hum is going through all these effects, and just the differences between the channels on the desk when they panned left and right. You get this sense of, I don't know, I can't explain it. And at one point I was producing an album for Noah. She's an amazing singer for Universal, and when I mastered, I mixed it on an analog on a J9000 SSL, and which is very quiet, so the mixes were really clean and everything. But then I just got obsessed about adding more and more and more and more noise, until I ended up mastering the album with a noise floor at -40. And so I obviously faded it, and because it wasn't like a dether which just runs through a plugin. It was a noise that I added, a stereo noise. I took, I don't know, I recorded the dether noise of some plugins and converters, and not converters, some
Oh, what, you just added that to the signal?
And I added that, and I found I liked the one that Toast made. So you had a
it was a CD burner, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good grief, though,
and that was the one that I preferred the most. So I actually increased the level of it, and then I made sure you don't hear any hiss on the album. So it was just when the music was playing, and it was fading before the music ended and all that. But it just contributed so much to the sound. It was unbelievable.
That's really wow. That's a really interesting idea.
Just about Mark Hollis, then his solo album. One of the things that typifies these. I think of them as a trilogy: Spirit of Eden, Laughingstock, and the Mark Hollis solo album. There's an incredible dynamic range across these things. They're really, which again sort of flies in the face. Certainly, like Spirit of Eden, these incredible dynamic movements that we hadn't really heard for many years within the kind of rock music world, certainly much more akin to kind of what you'd experience in classical music or acoustic jazz music. But so this kind of process went across these three albums, but the final album, the Mark Hollis album, was recorded with just a pair of microphones in the room that didn't move. And they did have different overdubs going, but the musicians would position themselves in the room, so the mic stayed put. So they would sort of essentially, each layer went down, they would place them in the stereo space by having that as a pair of fixed mics. And I think it's quite interesting, especially with what Noah was saying about the noise. If, like, the first song, it takes a while before it comes in, and you just kind of hear the noise. I mean, those mics are probably always just being a certain distance away from things, even with the signal chain they had, there's a little bit of noise. And before the first note, I can't remember how long it is, but it's certainly, like many seconds of just this kind of noise, like a kind of hiss, or just, and that's your introduction into it, and it
sets up an expectation, doesn't it? Noise can be very, very useful. I remember, there are so many ways that it can be used, and particularly if you increase the amount of noise coming, because we're so used to not hearing it, you automatically think the next thing you're going to hear is going to be really, really loud, because it sounds like somewhere in the system the gain has gone up more than it should have done. In fact, I remember they used it. I think they used it in the first Spielberg dinosaur thing, Jurassic Park. There was a bit where there was just silence, but then the noise, it just got really loud, so it was like and it increased the tension in the room before the big sort of something happened, because you just thought that there was going to be something really loud is going to happen, and it would psychologically work very well. But that's another story anyway. But yeah, the sad news of Mark Hollis's demise. I mean, I'm sure there will. I mean, I was looking on YouTube. There's lots of people posting. You can hear the music. Yeah, there are different phases of it you can hear, and if you get a chance to listen to that interview, it's quite interesting, because there's a lot of detail, a lot of. This is the one that's Mark Hollis interview on Port Film Co-op. That's well worth checking out, because there's a lot of insight into the process and how they decided to put it together and whatnot. It's quite interesting, and also I must check out the Phil Brown book.
Can I just say one last thing, just because it's relevant to this? It just interestingly. Paul Webb, who goes under the pseudonym of Rustin Man, he released his kind of first album. He did an album with Beth Gibbons from Portishead about 17 years ago, amazing album called Out of Season, that was engineered by Phil Brown, and certainly has got certain textural alignment with that latter Talk, and then nothing for 17 years. And then Rustin Man released this album. I think it came out just at the beginning of February. Jamie Liddell on his podcast, he did an interview with Paul.
Okay. So it's Jamie Liddell Music, so we can
he's Hanging with Audiophiles podcast. And that album, I mean, it's just like a sad coincidence, really, that the first thing to emerge from that Talk stable has happened this month, which has sadly coincided with Mark's passing. But I've listened to it a few times now. First listen, I was a little bit, I'm not sure, but it's really growing on me, like the Talk stuff, really. So anyway, that was it. Thank you.
Cool. Well, we're just going to have a quick word from our friends over at iZotope, then we'll announce the competition, and we will be back in just a second.
RX continues to be the industry standard and leader in audio repair for music and post-production. And with RX-7, we've introduced groundbreaking new ways to quickly and easily fix and manipulate audio. Take the game-changing Repair Assistant, an intelligent helper that can detect noise, clipping, clicks, hum, and more. Also new in RX-7 is Music Rebalance, a powerful source separation tool. Drums too loud? Vocals not loud enough? Let's fix that. You can also create instrumental versions of songs by removing the vocal elements. You can now alter the pitch without affecting the timing of your audio, and conversely, alter the time without affecting the pitch with the new variable time and variable pitch modules. Using the new dialogue contour, you can improve the performance of a line or even create a new performance by altering the pitch contour of the dialogue, therefore adjusting the intonation of the speaker, and introducing Dialogue Dereverb, a module powered by machine learning to reduce the presence of reverberations around dialogue. RX-7, a new frontier in audio repair.
And of course, you can download a copy of RX. You just head over to iZotope.com, and there's basically a demo download where you get to figure out what it all could do. There's tons of tutorials on there, and we have competition from last week. We asked for various hashtags, and we got a winner. The winner is Stephen B. Coleman, who posted the winning tweet. So if you want to get in touch at Stephen B. Coleman, we can get you a copy of RX sent right over to you. Thank you very much. And we do have competition again this week, and this week we're looking for the hashtag mix deconstruction. The hashtag mix deconstruction, which was basically, I don't know if you saw the the Mark Ethier interview that we did. He was very proud of that particular feature, that kind of exploding the individual elements. Anyway, the hashtag Mix Deconstruction, the hashtag RX7 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. if you want to enter the competition. And we thank them very much for providing the prize. Okay, let's take a look. What's next on? This is kind of a bit mad. Shall we have a bit of Soma Labs? Oh no, that's not. It's this one. I do beg your pardon. Wrong one. This is the new Soma Labs ether. Soma Labs, Vlad
These
Kreimer,
are
who is
electromagnetic waves, and they are all around us. And this is ether. It's a wideband receiver that makes them audible to the human ear. Ether is a kind of anti-radio. Instead of being tuned to a specific radio station, it receives all the interference and radiation that a traditional radio tries to eliminate in order to create a clean signal. It captures the radio waves as is from hertz to gigahertz because it doesn't contain the tune.
So essentially, it picks up everything, all the electromagnetic noise. I'm really digging that voiceover. It's very ASMR, actually. She's got a lovely voice and the great accent. But this is so the idea is you could bring it into that. It picks up. We've seen these things before. I think Coma did something. Coma Electronics did something where you can pick things up. The field kit, there are ways, but what's really interesting, it's so sensitive. You can't record stuff on your phone. You have to keep your phone kind of a meter away from it. You have to keep the audio recorder a meter away from it with the lead, otherwise that starts to introduce electromagnetic and you get this sort of feedback. But I think the idea is it just records sort of random noises as you're walking around, and there's a lovely piece of music at the end that's taken from it. And it's €120, and it's that sort of mad Vlad Kreimer kind of invention who's done the pipe and the Lyra 8. I mean, we love his stuff. I mean, this seems perhaps a little bit niche even for me, because you can't actually play it. You just sort of suck all the sounds in, right?
Oh, it's a fascinating device, though, isn't it? I love that little animation at the beginning of the video there, where you see all the kind of waveforms coming.
Yeah, great, isn't it?
Really cool thing. I am quite tempted, to be honest. Just almost out of just so curious, just to go around my studio and just go around my house and just to see what's going on.
So you could use it as a kind of as a diagnosis tool as well, right?
Ooh, I suppose so. I mean, maybe be able to find out if the power supply's gone on something. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. It does make me wonder if it does give you a bit of insight to what the kind of poor animals who've got incredible hearing have been, subject to. I mean, I'm not sure if they, insects or something, but the bats,
marine mammals, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think this would be a really cool thing to have in. I've got like a little cupboard of oddities that I pull out on productions just whilst looking for those quirky textural things, and in fact, absolutely, the conversation we were having earlier about noise.
That'll give you lots of flavours of noise, won't it? Yeah,
lots of flavours of show title.
There's a show title. I'm writing that down. Flavours of noise. Yeah.
But the video is really nice, isn't it? In that it does actually show. I mean, all of it is. It's not musical sound necessarily.
Yeah, well, sort of none of it is musical sound. Is the thing I would get from that. So that's the only thing I would say. I don't know. Doesn't it mean that you're going to end up? I mean, would you want to record 8 hours of that stuff and then find a good bit?
Well, you just said something. You said, would you want to record? But my question is, why can't it just record the sounds? It just plays them
Apparently, because just even putting something that would be writing to an SD card or whatever would introduce its own level of mechanical an RF, which would then be amplified, so it would become self-oscillating, if that's such a thing in this sort of context.
But then, what are you supposed to do with it? Go around the tube and listen to sounds.
You can't record with it.
I mean,
you would record into a recorder, but you have to have the recorder a little bit further away.
Imagine, I understand, but imagine that I would try to make the effort of, there are ways of doing it. If you generate some magnetic radiation, it would be fixed and it will be known, so you can find ways of canceling it out and things like that. Because I think that would be amazing to be able to go and just with this device in your pocket and then just to press record on it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
So that would be amazing. The other thing I was thinking of is, perhaps it can be used to assist the visually
visually impaired.
Because imagine if you have 4 of those, then you would get a surround image of your
electronic
with
surrounding.
headphones. Yeah, and maybe this could some way, assist in some way. Don't know, something to explore.
I guess the thing is, for €120, putting all the technology that would require to record and the A to Ds and all of that stuff in it might end up, just bumping it up into less of an impulse buy. But I take your point.
I wonder what it would sound like. Obviously something that we can't do, but just to go back in time and hear how much more noise we're subject to now than. I
think you could do that just by visiting locations where there isn't anything. So, I'm sure you could do that. But
right.
Yeah, I guess it's an oddity, but it's the sort of thing that some people will find handy. If you want to check it out, it's Soma Laboratory. No, SomaSynth, isn't it? .com. And you can order it from them, €120 plus tax. So, it's not a great deal of money to spend, but it is some money.
It could be a great generator for a modular system.
Yeah, that's true.
If you had something like that, it's an endless source of kind of weird noises.
People do. In fact, Ian Boddy does. He's got like a little radio that he just tunes between the station and picks up and samples bits of noise and brings that in and filters it and stuff. So, I guess you could do it. You can do it in that way as well.
There is a Eurorack module, which is an AM tuner or an FM tuner or whatever. Yeah, there is one. At least one.
And there's one on the OP1 as well, I seem to remember, isn't there?
Just a radio, FM radio.
Oh, it's FM radio. Okay, so you get stereo. I can't see what it is. Autopilot, yeah, I'm looking for it, but I can't find the actual URL. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Let's go to this first, actually, because this was kind of cool. This is Geert Bevin. I think it is. Maybe it's not. Oh, there it is. This is the MIDIWrist, which is something I know that you've actually been. So this is Bluetooth MIDI and MIDI control on an Apple Watch, which is, I think it's a first. And this is just simple transport control, but he also controls an H9, which has got Bluetooth MIDI built in, and there's also the potential, I think, which is coming up, of voice recognition to MIDI commands using the watch as well. So it looks like it could work. I don't have an Apple Watch, and I'm very unlikely to get one, but I suppose if I did, it might give me a reason to have it. I don't know, Gaz. You're the one amongst us. Well, I don't know. Maybe Yoad does as well. But you've got an Apple Watch. Have you been?
So I've got it, and I've been playing around with it. And when I first was starting playing with it, oops,
you might have to take it off, otherwise it's going to break your arm.
But the gist of it is quite interesting. At first, I was a little bit unsure of the applications for it, but transport control alone is actually really helpful. It transmits standard MMC.
Does it send over RTP? Can you use it with RTP MIDI as well and sort of fire it around the place?
Yes. So what happens is, obviously an Apple Watch needs an iPhone to accompany it. So the iPhone is essentially, whatever the iPhone can do within the MIDI world, this is just like an extension to that. Although I think I'm not sure with the Bluetooth side of it, I'm assuming you're always going to have your phone nearby. All the configuration or everything mainly happens through the phone anyway, but there is some quite interesting haptic aspects of it. So the haptic, this thing has got like a little knocking function. So like when you say push a button, like so there's different pages on the watch. You've got I'm not sure if I can be able. Let's just get into here. I'm not sure if this is going to be easy to see, but I'll explain it as You've got main pages. You've got like a transport window.
Oh,
there.
yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So when you push those, you get a little haptic reaction.
Does it clock? Does it metronome back at you? 1, 2, 3, 4?
No, not yet. I mean, that might be something coming. Here's another quite cool thing. Oh.
What, the watch?
Sorry, because
it's also a watch.
No, because it's off my wrist. It's not. You really need it to be on the wrist. But you've got a program change, which is quite cool. Then you've got these like parameters, and then what you do is you use the crown on the side to adjust parameters, and that's actually got a very nice action to it, and it feels quite does feel quite nice. And if you've got if you were to select multiple, I'm looking at myself.
Yeah, it's very difficult, disorientating.
It's tricky. Sorry,
it does have, it may seem a little bit kind of crazy, and who needs that? But you found that you have applications for it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting. There is there's like a chaos pad. There's an XY there as well.
That makes sense. Yeah, a little XY pad.
All the CC parameters are all adjustable from the phone, so you can customize it however you want. So far, I found the best application for it myself is using it with the AUM mixer that we were talking about earlier, running that on my iPad. That just straight away responded to the MMC transport control, which is great because I love setting AUM with a hybrid of physical inputs and audio unit inputs and various things like that, and having having that transport control certainly cool. But I really think that what it is tapping into, which I think it is the voice control stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's getting really, really good. Let me just go to Yoad a second. Yoad, I don't know if you're an Apple Watch user or whether I know you've got lots of custom setup stuff. But I mean, do you use touchscreen controllers to control your thing? I mean, I know you build quite a lot of custom hardware for your MIDI controller. You seem to have that in fixed places in your setup.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if I was wearing a watch, I would definitely get something like that. But I just physically can't stand the
restraints. You want to go free. Yeah. You go wrist commando.
Exactly.
There's another title.
Exactly. So, but yeah. But otherwise, I think it's a nice idea. I was thinking, when I looked at it, I was thinking that it would be something that is based on the accelerometer of the watch and will be sending X, Y, Z controllers. And when I saw the guy playing guitar, I thought, he's going to trigger some shakers at the same time or something like that.
Okay.
That was my initial, until I noticed that the watch is actually on his left hand. So something like that could be really amazing where you can, I think there's actually a controller like that, but it's not a wrist. It's not on your wrist. It's something that I think you hold and then you can control. It's like a 3D theremin or something like that. That is something that I would definitely explore.
That's interesting.
I think he's looking into using the accelerometers. I think that's going to be coming. Something I should mention though is that Geert's such a smart cookie, and he,
well, he's behind the Moog apps, and he's
absolutely, and has been very, very important in the development of, or rather, the uptake of MPE as a standard, and also a number of years back he released Gecko for the Loop Motion, which was a CC controller that would would respond to all sorts of things. Gestural kind of.
Yeah, I think I've got one of those in the cupboard somewhere. I
got one here. Yeah, so I think he's definitely. This is I think early days for MIDIWrist, but I do think it is. As I say, at first I wasn't sure. I'm starting
it's got legs. It's got legs. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? You were talking about voice command, and this is something that's also very interesting to me. I mean, I've particularly recently, Google's Translate has got extremely accurate. We were noticing the captioning it was doing on some of our YouTube videos from NAMM was very advanced. Capitalization of MIDI, capitalization of brand names. Getting technical terms hyphenated. It was like, wow, that's like, it was 95% accurate, which is astonishing. And for music, you think, oh, that'd be great. But then by the same token, I've got an Alexa at home. And recently I've been playing the radio on it and I have to shout at it really loud because it can't seem to differentiate me saying, Alexa, can you shut up, while the radio's on at the same time in itself. So it's a difficult, how do you get it to do that? Because if you're working in music and you're using voice commands, does that mean you've got to turn your music down to be able for it to work?
That's just given me a great idea, Nick. Imagine getting like an ice cream van type thing with big PA systems on there. If you've got a new album coming out, and just drive around the street going like, so I'm
Alexa,
Deluxe. Hey Alexa, play Asteroid Deluxe, or just blaring out. Hey Siri, play Asteroid Deluxe. Just drive around everywhere, setting it off everywhere you go.
That's a good idea.
It actually happened during the Super Bowl. In the States, I think a couple of years ago, when an advertising company just said, Alexa, go to, exactly like you said, and it actually like 50 million homes went to this website or something like that. Yeah, it actually happened.
That's a really interesting idea. I can see that sort of voice recognition guerrilla action. That's that's definitely going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that it would be great. I have this little Alexa thing, and it allows you only to call it Alexa and another name. But it would be great if you could program your own sounds, because then you could do something like I don't know, pizza or something like that with a lot of consonants, and it would cut through you name a cat, idea, something with a kind of a that would go through the music or whatever is playing.
Yeah,
or
that's
just a scream or something.
Yeah, scream.
With the watch, you do have the option to have you can just raise it and talk into it without having to do the Hey Siri kind of thing to start it. It uses detects the motion of it being turned to you, and there's a app that Rick Alpin put me onto called Just Press Record, and it's very, very simple record app, and so you literally just I couldn't do it. Just press record. So now it goes into a record mode, and then that will then automatically get transferred up to the cloud. But the thing that surprised me was actually the microphone in the watch is really clear. I was really surprised. Right. Ostensibly, you would use that record function for just like as like a dictaphone,
voice notes or whatever.
Yeah, and the app itself has got the sort of a transcribe function, that sort of thing. But for just when you just want to quickly grab a musical idea, you've just got it on your wrist. I was really surprised. It's still recorded away at the moment, but I was. So we did a gig a couple of weeks ago, this with Charlotte Church Pop Dungeon, brilliant gig. Afterwards, we were having this crazy party, and there was this big sing-song thing broke out, and I thought, ooh, good opportunity. I'll grab it. I'll record it into my wrist, into the watch. But then I forgot to press stop. And then the next day, my watch was
still going.
Batteries, and I was going, why did I should? And I thought, oh my God. So I've got all the party. I've got 6 hours recorded, and I've got all this stuff
you shouldn't have.
So all this stuff I shouldn't have, and then there was this taxi driver argument with someone. I got it all.
It's just like dash cam. It's just like a dash cam, isn't it? Really, effectively, same sort of thing.
Exactly.
But the thing that's scary about that is, that audio will probably be analysed by somebody for voice stuff, because as we've seen, the voice thing is really useful, but it's also quite sinister. I don't know. Many times me and Jane have been talking about stuff, and then related ads will appear on her Facebook stream because it's picked up. And everybody goes, oh, no, that's not. And it bloody well is. It absolutely,
it is.
Absolutely.
I heard another thing. I'm not sure if it's true, but this is what I heard, that Samsung TVs listen to you, and even if you're offline, they record and then sync it once it's back online. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. I have too. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, convenience is one thing, but then there's privacy also. I mean,
Exactly.
There is definitely a.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If you're recording and you got your phone out, there's some sort of obvious thing there. But when it's like recording on the wrist, there's no indication or anything that you're recording.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, just an aside. I mean, you can fire up instances of Google Translate. You can actually buy cloud resources where you will just send it audio files and it will translate. So anybody can access this. You have to pay them for that. But I mean, if you're an evil empire, then that's not really a problem. If you decide that you wanted to release a thing with a mic in it and it just constantly fed the whole lot up to your own little Google box that was then running it all through the big AI brain, that happens. I mean, this is another thing about audio, I suppose. And as much as we find the analysis and the help, certainly iZotope doing great stuff with analysis and machine learning of audio inputs. I'm sure Waves have got similar technology, either in use or on the back burner, just to be able to analyze the frequency content of music, to be able to learn to learn EQ curves, whatever it may be. A lot of this stuff, this data is being processed all the time, by various kind of supercomputers all over the place. But it's the speech stuff that is a bit concerning. Anyway, that's probably getting a little bit off topic, but yeah. Anyway, what was that? That was it. Soma Labs Ether. There we go. I think that led to something there.
And the MIDIWrist.
And that's the MIDI watch. Yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, we should also big. Great news. It looks like Jexus, who's WC Olo Garb, is back. This is the guy, I think he's Polish, been offline for a year. He was the guy who made all the videos, the only synth demo videos for a very long time, with this kind of incredibly interesting stylistic video content. I like the rabbit. Oh, yawning rabbit. Isn't that nice? You can't beat it. So I think he starts off with, I'm trying to remember what his first synth is. So it must take ages to do this stuff. And he's going to be back. And he's going to start kind of getting back on it. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's a synth. So here we go. There we go. This is... he also uses really crappy video cameras, but good audio. ESQ1. There's a whole. These are sort of some rough cuts of things that he didn't post, but these are the sort of things he did. He's always got some great riffs. And people do respond well to a good riff on a synth. I do. What's this one? So anyway, he's back. You can check him out. I think his YouTube handle is Jexus, Jexus. And I know people were saying in the chat room some time ago, Jexus is back, Jexus is back. So hopefully there will be some more stuff from him. And I think, I don't know, video... It's like the things that I've started doing, just the little jams on synths. People respond really well to that kind of stuff. They kind of are happy. They're happy to watch. And I think, I mean, he's created a bit of a rock for his back in that there's all this other creative input he has to put into it to create that kind of weird video narrative. But it's interesting. It's like gaming, isn't it? People are happy to watch people game. There's all those sort of Twitch channels.
Yes, yeah, and unwrap stuff from IKEA and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time on eBay at night going through some old keyboards and vintage stuff and all that, and whenever I come across some hardware that I'm not that I don't know, I go and look for videos on YouTube, and some of them are just mind-blowing in the sense that they're so bad.
Yeah,
people who don't have a clue and are trying to with crappy sound. It's almost like enjoyable to watch at times, but Jexus's videos are really great, and there's something about his sound which is quite unusual, but at the same time it's like a theme. It's all kind of sawtooth based, and it's really lush, and it's really lo-fi. I heard that he records all his videos to VHS, and I'm wondering whether he records the sound and then he transferred it. So actually his effects and all that are not digital, they're real. He's like messing with the tracking and I don't know, stuff like that while So I'm wondering whether he records the audio to VHS as well, because that's quite an interesting sound.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a whole period of using VHS tapes to master. I mean, ADATs legendarily used, there's a digital format, but they were SVHS tapes, weren't they? And then there was the Sony F1 system, which was on Betamax tapes. I mean, there's
but I'm talking about the analog. Yeah, I'm talking about the
analog.
actual analog. Analog tracks within the VHS tape.
Yeah,
because
that's a great idea.
There's actually a plugin called VHS, an ensemble for Reactor. I think it's a freebie as well. It's free, and it's called VHS, and it's really amazing. It doesn't necessarily sound like a VHS tape, but it's a really good lo-fi maker, basically.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
Really
Gaz,
nice.
you were just coming in there.
Oh, well, I just remembered about this old VHS player I used to have, an old I can't remember if it was JVC or something. I'm not sure, but it had 2 1/4-inch mic inputs on the front, and so you could actually record into stereo directly into it, and it did sound actually really good. And so I sometimes used to just use it just to record onto, but I also realised that you could record your own soundtracks. And I remember in my first flat, one of the guys this is a bit of a wrong story, but it's funny. He had a blue movie on VHS, and when he was out, we redubbed the soundtrack. I remember one time then we just heard him like yelling from his room, "Bastard!" As he does. I mean, this is obviously in the pre-internet days.
I was just thinking about that. I mean, so that you could, because there were two. A lot of did VHS have 4-channel, and 2 of it would be pre-recorded. You could overdub it. I remember there's some
like
video
that.
format. Yeah,
we could overdub. Yeah, that's right, because we were overdubbing onto things
that were already there, that were still there. Right?
Yeah.
That's great. What a great idea. Okay, well, I think that kind of brings us to about 5 o'clock. I've still got a couple of topics that keep falling off the end, but hopefully things are going to start picking up. I mean, the news side of things is still a little slow, but I think that's going to be picking up pretty soon. There's going to be some more interesting things joining in, and I just want to say thank you very much for everybody for joining us. It's been great fun. Thank you very much to the chatties in the chat room. Thank you. That's you can find us at sonicstate.com/live. We've got an IRC old school. It's like the VHS chat room, it's effectively, but people still dig it. And then there's obviously the YouTube chat room. If you subscribe to the channel Sonic State, then you will get notified every time we go live, which is once a week, 4 p.m. If you've made it this far, you probably already know that, right? And once again, I should probably say thank you very much to iZotope for the competition prize. If you want a chance to win iZotope's excellent RX7 audio fixing and restoration bundle, we're looking for the hashtag mix deconstruction, that's one word, and the hashtag RX7 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. That's on Twitter. Fill up the extra characters with anything you fancy. I know that they monitor it and we monitor it, so it's always nice to see any messages or photos or anything else there. And good luck if you want to enter that competition. But that's it for this week. Thank you very much. Yoad, thank you for joining us. I hope the rest of your week working on cutting-edge coding products at Waves Inc. will be a fruitful one. But I bet you're dying to get back to your studio, right? Now that you've finished it.
I am. Now this is already, absolutely.
You're pining for your studio, but thank you very much for joining us. And also, Gaz, thanks for joining us as well. And we'll get that audio thing sorted out at some point. Did you get your Mac fixed yet, or are you still?
Oh gosh, there's a big hefty bill. So it's trying to work out what to do. But I mean, I think its value is still around 1,500 quid. So I think it's worth doing. But it's kind of I think, it's just. I was going to say though, Nick, I thought that your last Friday fun with the clavinet and
the clav,
the Ventris, that's really cool.
Oh yeah, I liked it. I watched it as well. I really liked it. Yeah. I
love the Friday fun. It's brilliant.
I just remember because when I reviewed the Artura Keylab Mark II, which is the master keyboard, it came with Analog Lab, and I just remember thinking how great that clav sounded and how great a clav sounded generally, and they've done a pretty good job of creating a sampled instrument. And like I said, I looked at buying one, but they were like up to $3,000 for just a regular old clav, which I remember was so
the
cheap.
playability of
Oh.
I love the way a clav feels. So you can feel that when you hit those strings, that physical action of it is. They are amazing. I want one. I really want
I
one.
think I would like one as well. It's one instrument. Maybe I'll trade in my Whirly EP2 Android A for a...
Greatest clav player in the world, I think, is Kerry Minier from Gentle Giant. What he used to do with the clav was absolutely stunning. Really, songs like Freehand, that the clav work. Amazing.
Okay, well, I if I get one, then I can do another one. I feel like I can't do another one digitally. It would have to be analog. But anyway, Gaz, thank you very much for joining us as well.
My pleasure.
And of course, we'll head off into the sunset with our traditional wave goodbye. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Let me see. Did I actually? Yes, I did start the YouTube video. So we'll say goodbye now. Press end, and off we go. See you later.